Hello viewers and welcome to another edition of the YM Industry Personality Profile Series. The YM Personality Profile Series is a program designed to bring to fore those we believe are pushing the industry in West Africa, and Africa for that matter, to let the world of mining and petroleum industry recognize what they've done so far and then their contribution to the industry growth and development. Today we are very privileged to have a very distinguished person. She's so remarkable. She's still long in the industry and she knows all the ins and outs of it. She's actually a role model to a lot of females who are pursuing programs in science and engineering. She is in the person of Awo Quaison-Sackey. Awo Quaison-Sackey is the Regional Vice President, HR of Newmont Goldcorp Africa. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for asking me to talk with you today.
As is usual, we want you to tell us a bit about your background and then why the mining industry.
Very interesting. So I have a long background. I went to Achimota School, secondary school. I went to Legon to study law.
Okay.
And my intention at the time was to follow my father's footsteps and become a lawyer. So I went to the US for a one-year master's program in law, and then I discovered business. I was in a class and the light bulb went off, and I thought, oh, money makes the world go round. Why am I going to do law when I can go and do business? So I went for an MBA, and it was the best 2 years of my academic life, because I learned so much about what creates what makes the world go round. In terms of anything we do is a trading relationship. It's buying and selling of goods, services, products. And to understand the mechanisms of that beyond economics, into the financial world, into the marketing world, I think provided a huge underpinning for me. In fact, if I was going to advise any young people, I would say that it's actually very important to understand the world of business, because no matter what you do, you're going to be interacting with the world of business. So not everybody's going to do a business degree or an MBA, but I think it's worthwhile reading about some of those subjects so you can understand how to interact with those. So from there, I worked with a variety of different industries. I worked in the utility industry in the US, I worked in insurance, I worked in manufacturing. And I actually I'm relatively new to mining in that I've been with Newmont for 2 years, a little over 2 years. So, you know, before I joined mining, I looked at, it seemed like a very different thing from what I had done in the past. And somebody suggested, well, why don't you study it before you consider coming to join it? So, you know, I went to the internet and I looked up mining. I looked up the best of mining, I looked up the worst of mining. And I was very pleased to see that Newmont was considered one of the best of mining. And then I also, the worst of mining ends up being illegal mining and some of the things that happen there. So I studied all that, and then I was very proud actually to accept the offer that Newmont had made to me and to come here. Since I've been here, I've spent a lot of time at the mine sites. My office is actually here in Accra. But I go to the mine sites because that's where I get to interact with the people who actually do the work of mining. So I will never be driving a haul truck at this stage of my career, and I will never be processing or, however, the closest I can get to it is to visit where they do those things and also interact a lot with the people who do those things. So from that I've learned much about how mining occurs. I've learned much about what kinds of skill sets and competencies are required, and I feel that it will enable me to do my job a lot better. I have the human resources experience. What I'm getting now is actually the mining experience.
Well, I'm still trying to get a bit of your background. Where are you looking at coming this far? I mean, back then,
No, so, you know, when you start your career, you're just looking for the right opportunity. And to tell you the truth, it's not easy anywhere. So I was in the US when I realized I had to work. I mean, at some point you realize your parents are only going to look after you after a point. And I realized that earlier in secondary school. So during the summers I would always work to earn my money so I could buy my own provisions and clothes and, you know, because you ask your parents, it's like, there's 6 kids. So when I finished my MBA, and keep in mind at that point I had an LLB, LLM, and MBA. Yeah. And I couldn't get a job in the US. So I was very grateful at that point, because when I was in the Faculty of Law at Legon, they asked the women to go and learn how to type at the business school in case we needed to fall back on something. So at the time, I thought, why aren't they asking the men as well? But I did it, and it stood me in good stead in the US. After I got all my degrees, I couldn't find a job. I ended up working as a secretary for 2 years until I got my first professional job. So I was a very bad secretary. I could type, I could do the filing, but I don't think I had the right attitude for a secretary, because I thought I could actually, you know, make some of the decisions, and sometimes that didn't work very well. But I did the best I could in order to and then I got my first professional job. So I didn't start out thinking that I would end up being the vice president for human resources anywhere. Yes. I was just very grateful that I was given an opportunity. And in my first professional job, I worked in finance. And I would say that I'm not sure I knew exactly what I was doing, but I continued to learn, I continued to apply myself. I worked very hard even in those days. I would say now that I'm a confirmed workaholic. And it started back then because I felt that in order for me to sustain the level of performance that I wanted to sustain, I had to work really hard. So I did do that. So I progressed from entry-level financial analyst, to back into human resources. They liked the work I did for them as a financial analyst, so they asked me to join human resources. So I went and became the manager of benefits, and then I moved to a different company and I became the manager of benefits and human resources systems. Then I became a director of human resources with compensation benefits systems and affirmative action and equal opportunity. And then I got promoted to executive level within human resources, and I was gratified, but it was not something I expected. Yes. Now, at the end of the day, every hierarchy in every organization is a pyramid. Yes. And there's only one person on top. So I felt it was a privilege for me to have gotten to that level. And even in the environment I was in the US, where I was working with a company with 100,000 employees, in a division with 40,000 employees, everybody knew that that was a big step, and not everybody gets there. And then I moved to a different company, and I got a job still in human resources as a vice president, handling international human resources. So nothing in the US, but I had Brazil, India, the UK, Canada. And again, there's a lot of gratitude that I feel for having been able to accomplish that in the US as a black woman. Yes. And then Newmont recruited me here as vice president, regional vice president for human resources. And the overwhelming feeling I have all the time is just gratitude. I am extremely blessed. It's very hard work, but the fact that I get to do it, and I also get to bring my entire background, my law, my finance, my human resources to bear, I could not ask for.
I mean, looking back, what are at least the most important highlights of your career?
So the things I think about in my career are probably the highs and the lows. Yes. So I failed a few times. I never failed to the point of being terminated, but I could easily have. There's one point where I had a responsibility for the human resources systems, and I replaced the system and it didn't work. I could very easily have been terminated at that point in time. I was working for the 40,000 person division, and even the president was complaining about this thing. So I could very easily have been terminated, but I know that I had built a lot of goodwill prior to that. And I think when I look at my failures, having said that now, I spend time building that goodwill. So when something doesn't go well, I'm actually given a chance, given the benefit of the doubt. So I fixed the problem. I also fixed my problems, so nobody else came in to rescue me. So I fixed the problem, and we recovered, and then 2 years later, nobody even remembered that it had happened, except I did, because it was a lesson I learned about making sure that I've got my things in order, making sure I'm collaborating broadly with people, because what it took to fix the problem was way beyond me. I had to form teams of people around the company to work with me. And again, I had built enough goodwill that when I asked somebody to come, can you work on this team? It was a yes.
I'm still trying to figure out, you see, it's a lot. I mean, and like you said, you've seen the negatives and the positives. In all this, what's been your inspiration?
My inspiration?
What's been moving you on?
It's different today than it was in the past. I think that when I first started, it was probably earning more and more money. I have to be honest with you. When you come out of school, you're poor. So you get your first paycheck and you say, I want more. So I always had, up until let's say about 10 years ago, I always had a plan for myself. I always had, okay, so I'm going to have doubled my salary in this point in time. I'm going to be at this level by this point in time, and I worked at it. I wasn't obvious about it. I don't consider myself to be overly ambitious or grasping, but I had a plan for where I wanted to get to. And when I got to 35, 35 years old, I put a plan together for, okay, so what am I going to do after I finish working? And the plan was, I wanted to, I'm a musician, I play classical piano. I wanted to go to seminary and become a priest or a pastor of some kind and use my music. So I said that when I was 35, that when I was 52 I would do that. I'm way past 52, I didn't do it. But so you can tell that part of the inspiration for me was always my belief in God and my faith in God. It was always in the background. That's how I was raised, so that was important. But the other thing that inspired me was looking at people I admired. And I realized that what they had in common was that they always gave back. They always gave back to society, to their community. That was part of their makeup. And so I developed that need as well. It actually inspires me to give back, because you can actually see somebody take the seed and make it grow. And that is inspiring.
Yes, we're having a personal chat, a very interesting one with Awo Quaison-Sackey. She is the Regional Vice President, Human Resources, Newmont Goldcorp Africa. Awo believes that we need to understand the business very well as professionals, wherever you find yourself. You also need to read wide about other fields, especially business. You need to get down to the nitty-gritty of the business, where the actual things are done. Get yourself acquainted with the processes. We also need to always be prepared to start from somewhere. And let's always endeavor to work hard. In fact, double your role if you can. One thing we shouldn't forget is we always need to build a goodwill, always. You need to have a plan for every stage of your career and have a positive role model. What are your thoughts on local content and gender diversity in the industry, especially now?
So I feel very strongly about both. Having been outside of Ghana for a while and then coming back, I'm, to be honest with you, a little disappointed that we don't have much more skill and talent in the mining industry. Obviously, as in my job at Human Resources, talent acquisition is part of that. And there are lots of people who graduate from the University of Mines, for example, and KNUST. And I'm wondering where the seasoned, experienced professionals are. So it appears that when Obuasi closed, we lost a lot of people.
Yes.
So I would venture to say, and I haven't done a study of this, we have more Ghanaian mining professionals working outside of Ghana than we have internal. And that's disappointing, because I can only imagine what it would be like if we had all that seasoned we've got new talent. We're creating new talent. We could do better. But the seasoned, experienced role models that our young people need are not right here in the country. There are some. But when I think that we've been in mining for ever, 100 and something years, right? We could actually do better. Content to me includes even that. I think that we actually need to do more to get more Ghanaian suppliers, vendors, talent.
Especially that side.
Yes, that all contributes to the confidence that we would have as a nationality. On gender diversity, having dealt with what I would consider some of the hardest lessons that one can learn in life in the United States, where it's difficult as a woman, especially at the time that I was coming through my early career, and difficult as a black person, again, given the time I was there, up until current. I look around here and I know there's so much more that all of us could do to get our young women skilled and placed in the industry. So Newmont has a commitment. We signed the Paradigm for Parity a few years ago, I think it was 2016, in Denver, the CEO of the company. We signed it here in Ghana, where the regional senior vice president signed his commitment. And I am passionately working on this. We are going to get to a point where there's gender parity. I'd like to joke that we are going to make sure that the workforce is 50% male. Not 50% female. It's going to be 50% male. And I just wonder how our male compatriots would feel if the conversation was always about how can we get men into the workforce? How can we get to be 50% male? I think it's going to be a change in mindset for all of us. For all of us, in terms of how we behave, in terms of how we treat each other, in order for us to even make a dent in gender diversity. And there's a lot we're doing internally, and I'm hoping that we become much more public about our commitment so that we can work with other institutions and other organizations to make that progress.
Professionalism of the industry now, I mean, just compared to the international standards, I mean, you've seen it all for the past 2 and 3 years now. Are we there yet? Are we getting there?
I think we are. The talent we have, I would say, can stand the test in any of Newmont's other regions. I'm proud to say that last year we had a number of our mining engineers be hired by other regions, and generally they ended up getting promoted there. So the foundation is I think is very, very good. I think the professionalism is there. Where I see the gap the most is in the leadership. We need to start training our young people in the concepts of leadership earlier on. In fact, it should be combined with the curriculum, so that while they are learning the technical side, they're also getting visibility to the leadership side. Because it gets to a point in the hierarchy of any organization where your technical ability has gotten you this far, but what's going to get you even further is your leadership ability. And that's where I see the biggest gap. It's not talked about a lot in our organizations, and we don't do a lot in terms of educating people about what is a leader.
I'm still in the industry. I mean, I'm trying to compare the industry here, the state of the industry here, as in West Africa, to international standards. Are you sure we are par?
So from a professionalism standpoint?
Yes.
Okay, so being new to the industry and what I've seen.
Yes, from what you've seen so far.
I actually think that we do very well. So if I look at Newmont's 4 regions, the Africa region actually stands toe-to-toe with the other regions. I mean, that may be the best comparison. Because we have our Australia region, our North America and South America. There are differences in terms of how we operate, and we're probably...
Look at the standards.
I think the standards are very much, very, very close. Very, very close. I think that the Africa region stands toe-to-toe with the others. It may not be quite where North America and Australia are in terms of skills and talents and competencies, but in terms of our performance is pretty good. Technology, so generally when technology is going to be introduced, it may be introduced in one of the other regions first, but then Africa is right there. There are a few things that they use in other regions that we may not use here, but I think it's pretty much the same. We may tend to be more labor intensive. I suspect that is probably our own doing because theoretically labor is cheaper here. Theoretically, but especially in recent years, all the technology advancements that are being done in the other regions are also being done here in Newmont Africa as well.
Your current role, what are you seeking to achieve?
So I am hoping to create leaders. That's the thing that I can impact the most. I'm hoping that by the time I'm done in this role, we would have created a class of leaders who are nationals leading this company. We already have a lot of that, but I think we need to not just have it, but also create depth so that it continues over time. I include that, for example, in my definition of sustainability. We have to create that leadership. I would hope that we can have an impact on the community as well, and create the same kind of leadership in the community. There are things that I'm hoping we can do in the near term that will help to, so let me step back. When I look at our employee population, over 40% of our population comes from our neighboring communities. We have an agreement that we will hire at least 35%, but we exceed that. We can may probably go higher than that from time to time, higher than 40-something%. But the demand is for livelihood, sustainable livelihood. So I think part of that is education. And so what I'd like to see is more involvement from us from the elementary school level. So there are things that we are talking about now so that we can make a dent there. So those people are going to grow up and become the youth that are now demanding employment. And if we start developing a relationship early on, then that will help them understand the business of mining, not just what they see, but the intricacies of it, so they understand what kinds of skill sets can I get and where can I take my skill sets. So I'm hoping that we can impact that. Our gender diversity sits in the communities. We started a program recently called the Top Up Program, because we realized that the women in the communities will apply for our jobs, will go through the entrance requirements, but don't always make it. So the Top Up Program is to help us to,
Is that more of a skill acquisition?
It is. It's to prepare people to be able to pass our entry exams. So basic skills like what is mining, even to the point of getting a driver's license, so that the women can stand toe-to-toe with the men, apply for the jobs and pass the entrance exams. Those are the kinds of things I think that are going to sort of raise the level of participation in a real way.
That's what it is.
So we're piloting it now, and it's going to impact our community relations, our gender diversity, leadership. I mean, there's so many things that will get impacted by that effort.
But then I'm trying to put myself in your stead. You're here. I mean, that's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But you're all over. I mean, to the field, to the site.
Yes.
I know you come in early, you leave a bit late.
Yeah, I leave very late.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, you should be a magician. I mean, my point is, you're incredibly productive, trust me. And how are you able to manage this? Split your time, your tight schedules, and then the home.
Yes, so I'm fortunate in that I have a son and he's grown, so he's on his own. But years ago,
it's difficult.
It's not easy. It's still not easy. But years ago, I read a book. I read a lot.
Yeah.
I read incessantly. I read a book about how to work in such a way that you have the right balance. So I would not claim to have the right level of work-life balance, but the book talked about integrating it so that it was all one whole.
Yeah.
So I work a lot. I have a church life. I exercise pretty much 5 days a week. I eat right. I combine everything into my life, and I try to make it whole. So I will work a lot of hours during the week, and then on the weekends I make sure that I also have time for myself. Again, I'm fortunate in that my son is grown, but even when I was raising my child, I kind of had that same philosophy, which I imparted to him as well. During the week, do your homework, let's read, let's do that, and on the weekends we'll plan to do the things that we do as a family. So that's how I've managed to do it. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes there are issues that will even impact my sleep when I'm worried about some employee issue that's going on somewhere. And frankly, the travel, especially on Ghana roads, is difficult. I have to tell you, once you drive from Achin to Ahafo, you'll never forget or forgive the government for not fixing the roads. It's hard, and it takes its toll. So again, you have to plan for that. So when I travel to the sites during the week, Saturdays I will, I do a very long walk on Saturday, do my exercise workout, and then I'll rest. I know that sometimes there are family obligations I should be going to, or like funerals, weddings, or just visiting, and make sure that I am okay. If I need it. So it's not easy, but...
Yes, I know. I'm still wondering, what's been your strength all these years? Having to go through this pain every time.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. At the end of the day, I think it's resilience. The ability to bounce back and not take everything personally. There are things that will happen to us as people throughout our career, and sometimes we just have to put it behind and move forward. I would say, in addition to resilience and not taking things personally, is also to act as though what I'm doing today has to last.
Yeah.
So try to make the decisions today that are not going to create a problem tomorrow. So I would say that that's some of, and those I consider to be strengths of mine because I've practiced and I've done them over a period of time.
We're still having a very interesting chat with Awo Quaison-Sackey. She believes that as a system and for greater sustainability of the industry, we need to start training young professionals through leadership. And also we need to create great leaders along the value chain. We also need to read a lot about our challenges. And we need to have resilience. We need to have the ability to bounce back and not take things personally. What do you think is really lacking in the industry now?
I have to say that to me, generally, it's the right talent at the right time. Because I'm a human resources professional, that's the thing I tend to think about the most. But the people are what make the industry. And it takes us a long time to find the right person for the right job. And even when we put out an ad for a job and we get 1,000 resumes. Sometimes just the one right one is not necessarily there. So there's something about talent, the right talent. In fact, what we say here at Newmont is that our job is to get the right people in the right job, doing the right work. But there's something about getting that right talent in time that's a huge challenge. And if that challenge can be surmounted, I think we'd be in very good shape.
And given the opportunity, what would you want to see being done differently?
I would like to have more of our seasoned, experienced role models working with our young people. Even if they are not physically here, they are the people who have led the industry, understand it. I'd like to get them in communication and communion with our young people to help them along. We have to make it simpler to get business done. Mining is a very challenging industry. It's not just physically hard, but because of the fact that it's a natural resource and it's also a commodity, there's a lot of government involvement. There's the marketplace dynamic that sets the price and all of that. It's actually simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah,
right. I'd like us to be able to work closer and more hand in hand, government, community, industry, corporations, to find solutions for some of the things that are not working. If we can get that out of the way, then we can focus on building the talent and the skill.
I would want you to give a message to industry professionals, the young ones, up and coming ones in school. How would you want to tell them?
I want to tell them that they are actually learning skills that are so marketable. So I would say be good at what you do, be extra good at what you do. Unfortunately, it's always a pyramid, it's always a hierarchy. So be extra good at what you do, be dedicated to being the best. And the opportunities will come to those who are ready for the opportunity. In fact, those who are not ready for the opportunity won't even see it as an opportunity, right? So I've met so many charming young people. The charm is good, but also have the technical competency, the leadership ability, be the best. And I think that over time, the opportunities will show up.
I can't tell you how interesting our chat has been so far with Awo Quaison-Sackey, the regional Vice President HR of Newmont Goldcorp Africa. She will want to see experienced industry professionals coming in more to mentor and train young and up-and-coming ones. And as professionals, we need to improve our skill set always. We need to be extra good, go the extra mile at what we do, and wait for the opportunities. They will come. We don't need to rush through for opportunities. You sit here thinking about how production is going, thinking about problems on different sides. What do you do? What you're not thinking about these days?
So the 1 hour day when I'm not... No, actually, I have some passions outside of mining and production. So my mind works best if I'm thinking about something else, and then I get bright ideas about mining production and the people that mine. So I spend a fair amount of my evenings winding down. So after work and after I've had my evening meal, I'll play the piano. I play classical piano. So that helps me to sort of unwind. It also clears my mind. I play Scrabble.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm a vicious Scrabble player. I have a group of people that we get together and do that. I like to win I also actually like to lose. Losing is a humbling experience. One has to actually lose a few times in order to understand the need to keep working at it. Otherwise you become complacent. Lately, as I said, I exercise a lot.
Yeah.
I would consider myself to be a senior person. So in order to stay well and to stay fit and to have the energy to do the job, I do my weight exercises, I do my calisthenics, I do my cardio on a regular basis. So that takes up a lot of my time. And then I read a lot. I've been passionate about understanding how the brain works, so neuroscience. That's been my latest thing, because I feel that if, as a human resources professional, we can understand how the brain works, we can actually work with people to be better. I don't think that anybody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to work today to do a bad job, or not to accomplish my objectives. So on the one hand, I'm convinced that people come to work, they want to do a good job. And I also know that in reality, that doesn't happen for everybody every day. So I want to understand what happens between having that resolve to do well and then messing up.
Yeah.
What is it? And from what I'm reading and learning about neuroscience, the brain actually plays a role in that. And I feel like we can become better human resources professionals and help people to progress through their careers and do well if we understand some of that. So that's what I've been thinking about. How can we have people actually be better, to do well, to contribute? So I spend a lot of my time on that. One may say, well, that's your job. It's become so much part of what I think about, that if it's work, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm glad to call it work. I'm glad to call it play. Either way is fine.
We've come to a stage where you want to, that's for our viewers, because I know for a fact that you are very good at playing the piano. What we don't know, whether you like dancing. I don't think you party that hard. One thing about you now, that will really make our viewers say, oh wow.
So I like dancing. I'm not a good dancer. So like if you see me at a party, you'll see me moving. It's not good, but it's my response to the rhythm. So that's what I'll do. So I love music. I love, one of the things I've discovered is I lost a chunk of time missing Ghanaian music, African music, right? Because I was in the Western world. Oh my God! So since I've come back, I've discovered Davido and Wizkid, Shakawale, and all that. And so a lot of in my house, where no one can judge me, I'm dancing, right? And when I go out, then I'm a little bit more reserved. But I love music. I love going to jazz clubs. I love dancing. I love watching people who can really dance. I like having fun with people as well. And I also like my reading and solemn time. Let's say that as well. But
what's next for you? Are we going to see you conquer new levels? Do you have anything in mind you want to see done?
So I think this job at Newmont is probably my last organizational job in my formal career.
Yes.
But I have a desire to write. Write a couple of books, impart knowledge. So I'm starting to do a little. I did some of that in my prior life. In addition to work, I had a teaching role. So I think I'd like to explore how I can make that kind of contribution to people through teaching and writing as well. So I'm trying to set that up so that when 5 or 6 years from now, when I leave this particular role, if I last that long here, then I will move into that. So to be something that provides something for younger people in some way.
Yeah, with your insights now and giving the opportunity, would you have preferred another career 2 years ago?
No. No, this is actually the best place for me at this time. I feel that I'm able to make such a contribution here, and that is so satisfying. Even in the worst times, I remind myself, this is good.
And that is good as well. Mine is always joy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very, very much.